Well, thank you. First of all, let me say thanks. We have a lot of questions that we've been asked of us, and we're not going to be able to answer every single card or question that we have. But we are going to, I'm going to ask Ted to help me take some of these questions and answer them in some way we can answer these questions. But for right now, let me just take that one. What is it that we in Youth of BLM intend to do? One of the things that I intend to do is right away is go out and visit with industry and talk about what this might mean. I want to go out and visit with all the county commissioners, all interested parties, and talk to them about what this policy is on BLM lands. What it does do, this policy, is it will allow us to then proceed and give equal value to some of these lands and resources. But we will continue to process, to work with many of you to get some of the projects done in our BLM lands that are important for the state of Utah. We are committed from the BLM to continue to process the projects, the activities, the programs that are on the BLM lands. Now, for the counties and for the state and for the education of the children of Utah, we need to continue to do that. My commitment, Bob's commitment, the Secretary's commitment is that we are going to continue to do that. Will this policy then allow for some of the energy production in the state of Utah? And the answer is yes. This will allow for energy production. Will we have to take a look at some of those areas? Yes. But that is all part of our national policy, the NEPA policy that we have to do today anyhow. So I view this as one of those things that I'm going to work closely with you. I'm going to go out and visit with you. There's a lot of questions. We're going to answer. There's a lot of questions before us. We're going to answer those questions as we move forward. Okay.
Thank you very much. Mike Noel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to say that I recognize the position that Director Abby is in and our State Director, Juan Palma. It's very, very difficult to defend a position that all of us know is erroneous. It was made with not enough confidence by either Interior or BLM in the rightness or legality, and so they didn't submit it for public comments or any challenges. So your courage in being here today is good. You can tell that there's a great deal of both sentiment on both sides of this issue. Also, would like to say my good friend Pat Shea, who left, was upset. He might still be smarting from this 9-2 decision where we won a big decision against the Wilderness Society, because his name was on the front page of that lawsuit. So I'm sure Pat's saving his money up to pay back the bills. In any case, I believe that from '76, when the Federal Land Policy Management Act was passed, Bob, you and I both worked for the agency. At that time, it was a disposal act. Flipment was passed and it became a retention act with some disposal in there. There were promises made to the states, specifically to the western states. Representative Hansen knows this. Those promises were that we would share in those mineral resources, that we would be able to keep our water rights, that we would be able to have rights-of-ways under Title V, that we would be able to graze our cattle and to use those renewable resources such as timber. Over the last 40 years, we have seen those things co-opted by a very small, energized, and I would say a very effective radical environmental organization. These organizations have been able to infiltrate government. They work as a shadow government within the agencies. When decisions come out, they come out beforehand, and it's been very, very difficult. We just ended 15 years of legal challenges on our roads in southern Utah and throughout the state of Utah. We didn't end it, but with this win, which was a big win. We have had 15 years of litigation. It's cost the state untold dollars. It's created hardships for our people. It's thwarted development, and it's hurt us. And I think if you're going to take a look at these wilderness areas again, why don't you take a look at these roads and get these roads back to the people of Utah who own them?
Very good. It's been a very interesting hearing here today. I know there are a lot of people here that don't have as many tough questions to Bob, and there are quite a few here also I think we should recognize that see it the other way. And I think as the chairman of this Balanced Resource Council, we need to hear some of those views too. One person wrote, and I'll just read this because we've had comments from the other side. Dear Mr. Abbey, I'm sorry that no one chose a large enough room for you to see all the people who came to support Interior Secretary Salazar's decision to give wilderness values for consideration on BLM's management. There are probably 100 people here, including me, trying to thank you for giving wilderness a fair shake. I think it's fair to read that. I take no position on it myself, but I do want to read that so that gets dealt with. There's another one here that says, what bodies will approve designated wild lands? We understand it's none of the BLM, but what other considerations might there be?
The designation of wildlands can only be done through the land use planning process. So any wildland that would be designated would come through that land use plan, which is signed off within the state where that land use plan is completed. So that would be the deciding official.
The next question is for Juan Palma, and the question is, how will your office present these items to the public for review?
Thank you. As we envision the policy itself is that we would do two things. One is that we would look at the conformance of our RMPs. It may be that many of the lands have already been inventoried. In fact, they have, and they will conform with the new policy. Where they may not conform with this policy, then we would open up a public process. So we would invoke NEPA at that point in time, that is to open up for a possible plan amendment. At that point in time, the public would be involved. All sectors and all the public would be involved in that process. In that public process, we would have a discussion about roads, about all the other activities that would occur or not occur on those lands. At the end of that public process, then we would either designate or not in the RMP those lands as wildlands or not wildlands, or whatever the case might be. So there will be a strong public process at that stage of discussion.
And it's also true that there will be a chance for the public, and that does go through full NEPA, as you said.
It would go, and there is a chance for the public in that whole process that would be involved.
Okay. To Mr. Abbey, could you explain the origin of BLM land in Utah, as well as the authority to designate appropriate areas with wilderness characteristics?
No, I turned to John on that one as far as the origin. Again, I think in my background remarks, or my remarks that reference the background, since 1976, as Congressman Hansen indicated, the Bureau of Land Management, through the Federal Land Policy and Management Act, was given the responsibility to inventory all public lands, with some exceptions. The state of Alaska, for example, has some exceptions addressed there. And then determine through that inventory process which lands would be identified and managed as wilderness study areas, up until the time that the Congress determined whether or not those wilderness study areas would be designated as wilderness or released for other purposes. We've done that. We've done that. We also have the responsibility and obligation to use sections 201 and 202. And again, I won't go back and repeat what I said earlier. But there are other provisions of Federal Land Policy and Management Act that requires us to keep our inventories updated and to use that information as part of our land use plans. That's the authorities that we continue to use today. It's the authorities that we've used in previous administrations to keep those inventories updated and to incorporate that information in the land use plans.
Thank you. I'd like to now turn the time to the governor for a summary. Perhaps Lieutenant Governor Bill would like to make a summary. and then to Bob Avery for a summary, and Juan, if you'd like to make a comment too. We need to leave promptly at 3:30. Governor? Let me just be brief. I think there's still a lot of questions, and I would like to see if we could work with Director Abbey and Regional Director Palma. I think there's a need for us to, in fact, submit some detailed, specific questions and get some detailed, specific answers so that we understand. I think there's confusion, and there's good points that need to be made, and maybe some points that haven't been considered even when they presented the secretarial order. So I would like to propose, and with your permission, Director Abbey, to submit 20 or 30 questions that we will prepare with input from anybody and everybody, that so we get some clarification on this issue and the impact of what it does do and what it doesn't do to public land development here in the state of Utah. Lastly, I'd just like to reiterate an important part of this issue that causes me some consternation. Process does count, and how you go about doing things does have an impact on the result, and whether there's credibility in the process and whether there's a result that we all can kind of put our hand over our heart and salute. And I think the thing that I found the most concerning to me is this kind of at the last minute, without really us knowing what was going on. And well-intentioned as let's say it may have been, but we're kind of caught blind on this. And Congress is adjourned 2 days before Christmas. I get a phone call around a press conference in a few hours. We've tried to be open and transparent, and I think that ought to be the principle that guides us. If it withstands the light of day and public scrutiny, it's probably the right thing to do. If we've got to do it somehow in the shadows, then it probably is not the right thing to do. Or we haven't done I've appreciated, particularly Bob, your willingness to come here, and Juan, I think, is going to reach out to the people here in Utah, which I think is a very good step in the right direction. And I appreciate the fact that the Secretary of Interior, Ken Salazar, has come here on multiple times. I probably met with Secretary of Interior more times, I've been told, than any governor in the nation. Now, maybe we've got a bigger issue here than other states, but I appreciate the fact he's been willing to listen. And again, we've tried to bring people together in a reasonable and rational approach here. And so I guess my message to you is I'd like to continue with that. I think that's the way we'll find positive results. But if we have to do these things in the shadows, it will get us back to the days of war and contention. I don't think that's productive. We've done some great things in the state this past year. We've done more things on public lands in the state of Utah in the last year to 18 months than probably the last decade combined. Again, my encouragement to all of us is to be open, transparent. Let's work together for the good of the whole. Let's get everybody around the table. Let's reason together. We'll compromise when we need to, and we'll move ahead and get some things done for the good of the people of Utah and for the good of the people of the nation. Thanks, Bob. Thank you.
Well, Governor, let me close my remarks using some of the same statements I made in my opening remarks. We value our relationships. The Department of Interior, the Bureau of Land Management value our relationships and partnerships that we have with local and state governmental entities and with members of the public as we go forward and do some good things on the public lands as you just referenced. We will continue to work together for the common good and for the public that we all serve. You know, this action was not taken in the shadows. The action that we've taken is consistent with the law. It's consistent with the obligations that are required of the Bureau of Land Management to go forward and keep these inventories updated and to manage public lands appropriately, taking into account the full spectrum of our multiple use missions. Now, people who disagree with that concept certainly are free to litigate. There has been litigation on this issue numerous times. We have court decisions reflecting the legality of the actions that we're taking in both the 10th Circuit and the 9th Circuit. So, you know, as we go forward, I would hope that as we continue to have differences of opinions on some issues. But that doesn't take away our abilities to work together on those issues that we do have common understanding and agreement on. That's where we'll focus our attention as we continue to work on these issues where we may have some differences of opinions, because the work is too important not to focus energies on those things that can best serve the people. So the commitment that you're hearing from both Juan and myself today is a commitment to continue to maintain a positive working relationship with you, Governor, with members of your staff, with local governments, and with all stakeholders of public lands as we do our darndest to try to manage these lands for all people.